Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jay. He's Maddie. This is Yankee and the Brit, and we're coming to you with Championship Weekend. It's already Championship Weekend, Maddie.
Yeah, this season feels like it's gone a lot faster than all the rest. I mean, we say this every single year, though, right? Like, oh, it's so crazy, like how fast it's gone. But this season, like if you think back to the first week, Aaron Rodgers getting injured, that doesn't feel like that long ago, really, that happened. It doesn't feel like Aaron Rodgers has been missing out of the league for 20 weeks now. Maybe that's just because everybody talks about him every opportunity they get.
Do you think it feels like, because to me, this is going to sound stupid, but it feels like it just happened and it feels like it happened forever ago?
Yeah, yes, I know what you mean. Like it feels like, oh yeah, that can't have been that long ago, right? It can't have been that long ago that Aaron Rodgers was out. But actually,
Right.
if I actually sit down and think about everything that's happened in life since then, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
That's actually a good way to put it.
30 degrees.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like all the stuff that's happened since then. And like it's still wild to me that we've been doing this for 3 years.
Yeah, because one, it feels like we've been doing it all of my life, but also it feels like we've only just got started. Like the numbers that we've been seeing recently as well feels like, oh, things are actually getting started and it's feeling good. Like we've had videos that have had a lot of views before, but now we're getting more regular views. And thank you to everybody out there for that. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a lot more consistent. And all I'm gonna say is all of you on YouTube step up your game because the fans on Rumble are making y'all look silly.
We do get a lot more views on Rumble. I wonder why that is. Maybe it's because we're on the fringes of society, Jay. Maybe that's what it is.
You know what I think is big for us on Rumble? Barstool just signed a huge deal and they're moving to Rumble. So I think there's going to be a lot more sports people moving to Rumble. And I think that's going to do nothing but help us. So shout out Dave at fucking over there at Barstool. I think you're going to help us out. So we appreciate you too, man.
Yeah, Dave, my parents went over to New York recently and used your pizza reviews to find good places to eat. So that's also very helpful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, he is wildly entertaining. I enjoy him, and he is a huge prick, which I can appreciate at the same time. So, like, there's something about Dave Poirier. Is that how you say his name? I fucking
Portnoy.
Yeah, I love that dude because of how I like him and dislike him at the same time, which makes me like him even more. Like, it's weird.
There's so many guys in sports media that are like that. I think we can reel off like basically pretty much any analyst that is on the main networks is kind of like that.
Except with Dave, he's not the one talking sports. He just owns that shit. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and with like, I feel like he's actually being his real, like he's not being a dick on purpose. He just is a dick, which is weirdly worse, but also more likable, like in that way.
Yeah, because you're just being you. I will always respect for somebody for being themselves. Like my saying is, I'm always 100% unapologetic about being myself.
Yeah. Whereas like there's a few guys on there which I can tell like you're not actually a like Colin Cowherd, for example. I don't actually think that Colin Cowherd is a dick. I think he's only a dick when it suits him to be a dick because so many people like him in the sports world, right? To give him breaks. He must be a really nice guy.
It's Skip Bayless. Anybody who's ever worked with Skip Bayless will say on screen, I do not like him, but Skip is one of the nicest people walking the earth. Like even Shannon Sharp says, Skip off the screen will give you the shirt off his back. Like is the nicest guy. He will help you. Jamel Hill talks about how he helped her through her career, you know, and so it's something weird where they put on this act for the TV, like they turn into somebody else, and that's just I can't do that. That's too fake for me.
Yeah, weirdly, a guy who's gone the other way is Ndamukong Suh turns out to be an excellent NFL sports analyst. For any British people out there who've been watching the British coverage of the playoffs, Ndamukong Suh is doing our like analysis in the studio in London, and he's excellent. Really, really, really good analysis. to go with Jason Bell, who's probably the worst analysis of all time.
You guys, what's really cool about it is if Ndamukong Suh doesn't like something Jason Bell says, he pushes him down, stomps on him, and spits on him. And then, okay, no, I made
stomps
that
on
up.
his head, yeah.
Yeah.
The best sports analyst in the NFL, in my opinion, is a woman called Phoebe Schefter, who was the Bills. She was on the Bills analytics, like analysis, coaching analysis team, and she plays for Team GB, so the Great Britain NFL team for women, and she is like fascinating to listen to. Like, she is really, really good as well. So if you guys have those dodgy Amazon Fire TV sticks, I really recommend listening to the British coverage, because like we have the main coverage that the Americans watch, and then when you guys are all in ads, we're getting deep analysis from guys who've been in the league.
What do you mean by dodgy?
Not dodgy, sorry. Totally legitimate. How everybody watches sports nowadays.
I just felt attacked there for a second. I had to ask. No.
All right. Not dodgy.
Well, before we get into the two games this weekend, we have some coaching vacancies that were filled and some wild shit that's going on with coaches right now, because the three dudes I thought would have jobs for sure are still jobless. You have Belichick, you have Vrabel, and you have fucking Pete Carroll, all without jobs.
Yeah, I think like the most surprising though, like Belichick. Okay, Belichick is the most surprising. When the Falcons made their hire, I was so surprised. It felt so strange to me. And then actually I sat back and went, well, the Falcons have never spent a lot on coaches. Like, how much power do they actually want to give over? Like,
I gotta say,
nurture their offensive side of the ball, but I'm surprised.
I was shocked too until I thought about it. And then I went through it and I was like,
yeah,
they really need a franchise quarterback. And Callahan is going to be better for that young guy than Belichick's going to be for that young guy. And so the more I thought about it,
it's Raheem Morris.
Or Matt Murray.
It's Raheem Morris in Atlanta. Yeah.
No, you're right. Callahan just went, where the fuck did Callahan just go?
Tennessee.
That's where he was good. Okay. No, Raheem Morris is an odd one too, though, if you think about it, because
Raheem Morris makes no sense.
To me, he makes a lot of sense as a coach, though, and this is why.
Okay.
So he starts out 15 years. Well, he starts out a long time ago. 15 years ago, he gets his first head coaching job with the Bucs. That's after the whole Gruden Super Bowl and then fucking complete meltdown of the organization after the Gruden Super Bowl. He was young. And then what people, I think, don't realize is he was an offensive coach for a while and a defensive coach in the NFL. So as a head coach, that almost makes a lot of sense to me, that it's a guy who understands both sides of the ball, right? Again,
yeah.
If it's your scheme, the offensive coordinator is running, or the defensive coordinator, and you lose them, the coach can make up for that. Maybe in Raheem Morris's sit, he could lose either coordinator and be fine because he's done both jobs, which is rare in the NFL to have done both jobs at a high level, because we watched what happened when they tried to do it with Patricia and it didn't work.
Yeah, it's what stopped. It's kind of what, like, it's a way to stop the brain drain that kind of happened in an organization like the Eagles this season, or like a brain drain that can happen if you have what's interesting about the Harbaughs is like, they're not like, well, John Harbaugh is a special teams coordinator, right? So like, obviously they know the defensive side of the ball, they know the offensive side of the ball. What you've got to be when you're that kind of CEO head coach and you don't have a coordinating side of the ball is you've got to make excellent coaching hires. Raheem Morris has worked on some of the best coaching staffs in the league as well, with some of the best head coaches in the league. So he knows those lower level guys to bring into the building, as well as his coordinators, which really does help him. What it feels like he's getting the job off is his coordinating time with Sean McVay and the Rams on the defensive side of the ball. I thought if they were going to take a defensive coach, like, obviously he has called offensive plays, but I think he's more getting the job for his defensive side of the ball. I think if you were going to hire a defensive coach in Atlanta, it doesn't make sense for me to not go with Belichick then. I think what Atlanta really need is a guy on the offensive side of the ball, like an offensive head coach. And look, Raheem Morris has worked with some great quarterbacks, so hopefully he can help them figure out their quarterback position. I think what's happened here is the Falcons didn't want to give over all of that power to Bill. Maybe Bill said he wanted to be involved in personnel, and I really don't think that Bill Belichick should be involved in personnel, to be honest.
And then I don't have any facts in this whatsoever. It's just my question to you. Do you think, I think what you said could be true. I also think maybe Belichick said, I want this, this, and this, or I don't want the job. Like, you're giving me what I want, or it ain't happening. And it was more of like Bill going, no, because like the Commanders can say they don't want Bill Belichick all they want. But can we be honest? If we thought Bill Belichick was going to go there, wouldn't they be way more open to it? And then here's what I keep hearing in the sports media. There is rumblings that Andy Reid is going to retire after this season.
Yep.
And that Belichick's holding out because maybe Kansas City did get a hold of him and go, look, Andy's looking at retiring. We want you, but we can't do anything until after we win this Super Bowl. Because I'm guessing Kansas City feels, I'm not saying they're definitely going to win, but Kansas City's like, we're going to the Super Bowl and we got to wait till after that when Andy retires and then bring in Belichick. And if you're Belichick, what better way to catch Brady in rings than with Patrick Mahomes, the guy who started 6 seasons and went to 6 AFC championship games?
Yeah, a solid defense that you're probably only going to make better as well. Not that Spagnuolo isn't doing an absolutely awesome job there as well, but Bill Belichick is an incredible. Like, look what he did with the Patriots this year without Gonzalez and without Matthew Judon.
And if Andy Reid retires, don't you just keep Spagnuolo and all those guys on the staff, like, seriously, and work together with them?
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how their defensive side of the ball kind of molds together, because like Spags could go to lots of different organizations and go get the job as well. But
next year.
So like,
because what's going to happen is by time Spagnuolo is ready for a job after this season, all the vacancies are going to be full, right? So like, I'm just saying, they're 2 brilliant guys, because Spagnuolo was the defensive coordinator with that NASCAR defense in New York when Eli won a Super, So I just wonder if they could work together. Maybe
it would be, it would be incredible. Look, it's basically Mike Florio who's put this out into the ether that Andy Reid is retiring. And look,
I don't watch a lot of Florio. Chuck Pagano, retired Indianapolis coach's head coach, is the one I heard it from first. But I have heard it from Florio. So it's not just Florio throwing that out there.
I think Florio kind of voiced it. Florio voiced it like a decent amount of time ago in this season. And now I think a lot of people are kind of picking up from it. So maybe it's taken a bit more momentum. And what we said on the show is none of it. We don't think Florio's a liar. Like, we think his takes are off. I don't think he's a liar, though. So I imagine he has heard that from somebody. I see it difficult for Andy Reid to step away. And I personally think, wouldn't Kansas City be more interested in Vrabel and having that stability for a long period of time with Vrabel, where, look, if you gave Vrabel Patrick Mahomes, the Tennessee Titans might have made it to a Super Bowl with a much worse roster than what Kansas City have had when Vrabel was coaching there.
I agree with what you're saying. I have this weird suspicion that Vrabel ends up in Washington.
Great. Yeah, good. If I'm Vrabel, obviously if Andy Reid steps down, the Kansas City job is the job that everybody wants. Maybe those top 3 have got their short list of jobs. Nobody's taken the Seattle job either. So I still think Vrabel in Seattle, although Dan Quinn seems to be the lead focus for Seattle. Yeah.
It's the connection.
I don't think Dan Quinn I don't think he's head coaching material, if I'm being perfectly honest. And that's not just because I don't want him to leave, because I'm actually not too bothered with the way that the defense hasn't stepped up in big games. But I'd be interested to see. But Dan Quinn got the Atlanta Falcons to the Super Bowl, so I think saying that he's not head coaching material is probably a bit harsh. But he obviously got the Falcons to the Super Bowl. But look what happened in that Super Bowl, and then look what happened since that Super Bowl with the Falcons while he was the head coach there. So I'm not sure. I'd rather Vrabel, if I was Seattle, as well. But I'm surprised that those three are still out on the market. I think Pete Carroll's definitely not getting a job in the NFL this year.
This is a crazy thing to say, but it's true. Kyle Shanahan is the reason they lost that Super Bowl.
Yeah, because they didn't put any offensive.
Run the fucking ball. You're up 28 points.
Yeah.
Run the fucking ball, and they will never catch up. Never. Like, just run the ball.
Yeah, definitely. Also, like when you have Tom Brady on the other side of the fucking ball, like one of the most clutch guys the NFL's ever seen. Like,
but Brady even said,
stuff's gonna go.
If one thing didn't go right, we don't win that game, right? And he's not lying. Like everything they did, just run the ball. Like you had to win the game in overtime. Just run the ball, like But no, you let Matt Ryan go out.
That's where if you're a head coach, though, you just go and overrule your offensive coordinator at points, though. I know you're not meant
Kyle
to.
Shanahan. Yeah. It's Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, exactly.
Got you there.
Yeah. So yes.
It's wild to think.
So I think the Seattle job is interesting as well. I think the three most interesting jobs out there now, Kansas City, depending on what Andy Reid does, Seattle and Washington are the three jobs now that are like, okay, there's openings. What's going to happen? And I think Pete Carroll's probably not going to get a job. Does Bill Belichick have to get a job this year? Because the amount of coaches that are going on the hot seat next year for the way things ended this year in good teams. So you would say that Mike McCarthy's potentially on the hot seat next year if things don't go well because of the way things have ended the past 3 years. Sirianni, if the trend continues of what happened at the end of the year with the Eagles, could potentially be on the hot seat as well. Who else is out there? If the Bengals don't make it to the playoffs again, is Zach Johnson then in Zach Taylor then in question as well? Like there's some excellent teams out there who may have coaches on the hot seat for next year. But I think if Bill Belichick needs to get the coaching job this year, I think if Bill Belichick's left out in the cold and doesn't show that he can correct some of the stuff that went wrong in the New England since Brady left, then the rhetoric stays with him. But if he gets a job this year and immediately corrects everything, then the rhetoric washes away. So I think Belichick's the most in need for a job. I think Vrabel can be patient and hold out.
There's always 7 or 8 jobs open every year. I think Belichick will get a job at some point. We're on this trend of young offensive coaches. Like that's the real trend in the NFL. Not that everybody does it, but young offensive coaches. I like the Harbaugh hiring in Los Angeles. I think the Chargers, it's great. Like I forgot he even played for them for a year or two. I forgot that at the end.
I forgot about that as well. Yeah. I forgot.
We've talked about the California connection, even though they're not in San Diego, the San Diego connection he had. I think what makes Harbaugh one of the better coaches, even though his players love him, but he ends up getting on the people around him's nerves. Like he runs his course in about 4 years where people can't take him anymore. But his players always love him. And not only does he coach his players and develop them, he coaches his coaches and develops them, which I think is an underrated trait that Jim Harbaugh doesn't get. I'm excited to watch the Chargers next year with him as the head coach. I'm excited to see what he can do with Justin Herbert. And then I'll let you comment on it. And then another thing that we can move to after you comment on the Chargers is I'm fucking baffled by the Panthers head coach hiring.
Yeah. So with John Harbaugh, I think it's Jim or John? Jim Harbaugh.
Jim. Wait. Jim Harbaugh, stat you'll like. A crazy stat you'll like.
Go on.
CJ Stroud is 0-4 against Harbaugh's coaching.
All right. Lost against Michigan twice.
And
as the Ohio State quarterback. Do you know what? That's weirdly a job I think Vrabel could hold out for, by the way, because if the guy down in Ohio State loses to Michigan again this year, Vrabel, ex-Buckeye,
Yeah.
Vrabel ex Buckeye, like that, the Ohio State job. If he doesn't get a chance in the
He is your
NFL,
quintessential Ohio meathead, and I mean that in a good way.
I think like that's a real compliment coming from you that you mean that in a good way. By the way, being from Wisconsin.
Yeah, but he's part of that Midwest blue collar. So, like, if I call you a Wisconsin meathead too, that means that you're a hard-nosed, hardworking, blue-collar dude, right? Like, so.
Yeah.
I like the idea of Vrabel back to Ohio State if there's an opening, but Billy O going to that offense, I think that's huge. And I don't think Ryan Day's going anywhere because now with a 12-game playoffs, he's going to make the playoffs every year, a 12-team playoff. But that's a good call, though. If it ends up going bad, that is the
if he loses against Michigan. If he loses against Michigan again, then Vrabel could be holding on out for that job. Sorry, but back to Harbaugh. I think the key for a good CEO coach, so guys who don't coordinate either side of the ball, is the ability to like fill in for your coaches when they're having a shit day on the coach. I think Harbaugh is able to do that. I think he's able to like put his arm around his coach and say, do this, do that. And like his coaches respect him and say, oh yeah, you've done this in your career, you've done that in your career, like you're an amazing coach. So he's walking in with legacy. I think the problems with other CEO coaches when they're a bit younger and don't have that like side of the ball is like the lack of respect that then the offensive and defensive coordinators have for you, because they go, well, what have you fucking done? Like, what have you done? Whereas like Harbaugh comes in and goes like, I've done this, I know this works. And he's willing to listen to their ideas. Like he listens to their ideas. He lets them coach their side of the ball. But if shit hits the fan, he's walking over to them and saying, do this. I've been in this situation before.
And overall, it is his offensive scheme they're running, even though he's letting them run it and put their twist on it. And so if something happens, he understands it. As a quarterback, he could take over for that offensive coordinator. Like, God forbid, I don't wish any bad things on anybody, but say something medically happens to your offensive coordinator and he can't coordinate for 3 weeks. Harbaugh can call that offense. He was a quarterback. Like, there's not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he'll just walk in college straight away. I also think that it is a risky job for him to take in LA because everybody's called it the best job on the market. Like, there's now this. I feel like he doesn't have time to rebuild. I feel like he's got to go in there and win straight away.
I agree that would have been any other coach. I could be wrong, but I feel like Jim Harbaugh, just the name, gives him 4 years to turn that around.
Yeah, I also think the money might give him like enough time. Like the money that he's going to be getting paid to do that job is going to give him enough time
to haven't said
turn stuff around as well.
But what the rumors are is it's somewhere around $20 million a year, which is wild for that ownership group.
Yeah, and then that's the other thing. Let's heap some praise on the Chargers ownership group for the first time, like in a long time. Like, well done to you guys. You got the checkbook out. You made the hire. Like, this is the first time that they've done like probably the right thing by their organization.
They said they were going to
spend money in a while.
They said they were going to turn it around and do it differently, and they are. So good for you. They don't want to sell their team. We've heard that, like wanting to sell, like people wanting them to sell. Maybe the coach, maybe the owners finally get it now that I forget her name. The daughter is involved. It seemed once she got involved with everything, she was probably like, quit being cheap asses and fucking pay this guy, you know.
The Spanos family is that then the Spanos family. Yeah. I think they also have this hangover from their time in San Diego when you're a team in San Diego, like you do need to be more pinch the dimes, like look after the pennies and the dollars will pounds will look after themselves. And
they were literally playing in a soccer stadium.
Like I do think they have to like nickel and dime. That's what you guys call it. Like they do have to like wheel and deal, like those kind of things. I was trying to like remember the American saying for it. They did have to do that. And now their first few years in LA, they're still paying off the stadium. That's getting pretty close to paid off now because the amount of money that they're turning over from having an amazing stadium like SoFi, like I think now they're in a much more set financial position to make these big financial plays. So maybe we will see them run it differently.
I heard a British person, well, English person from England, so a British dude once call it counting coppers. That's what he called it. You guys say that?
Counting coppers, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And maybe just more over just his region of what people.
And he was
really
old. He was an older
UK.
cat, man. I was in my 30s and he was in his 60s. But yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I think my granddad says like pinching coppers. We just say if you look after the pennies, the pounds will look after themselves. Is like our main.
That's okay.
Like,
so there's a saying here that says, "If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense."
Yeah, that works as well. I think like wheeling and dealing. Do you guys have like wheeling and dealing? Is that something you guys use? Cool. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
unfortunately, too many people still use the derogatory term for the Jewish people. They'll be yeah. It's too many people still use that term over here. Where I literally called one of my friends out on it a couple weeks ago. Where like he was like me down, and I'm like, bro, you cannot, especially with what's going on in Israel and Gaza right now. You cannot be like,
yeah. So let's give the ownership credit where credit's due. They've been able to turn over this, and they are doing stuff differently. What's also interesting is how accountable are we going to hold Justin Herbert? Sorry, again mixed up with Josh Allen and Justin Herbert because they're very similar quarterbacks. Yeah, massive for Justin Herbert. This coaching hire. How accountable are we going to be holding Justin Herbert now? Because I think, like, very rightly so, I've been giving Justin Herbert basically a pass since he got into the league because I can see all the talent there. I understand that there's issues with some of his play, not taking the big shots down the field and all of those kind of things. You've got to imagine that Harbaugh is going to get him some great wide receivers in the 3rd and 4th round of the draft, like guys which are great value at those picks from his knowledge of college recruitment. They're also in a crazy position in the draft, considering they have their left tackle, they have their quarterback, and they're still picking, like, I'm pretty sure they're around the top 10, like, in their pick. So they could, if it was me, I'd see if there's a trade back candidate and still try and trade back to the mid-1st round and get Brock Bowers at tight end to have that tight end ability there. Or I'd take one of the wide receivers, Adunze, the wide receiver out of Washington, as well to like really get those weapons. I think the defensive side of the ball there has so many stars. Like they could go through and win double-digit wins in their first season.
I know everybody thinks it's a foregone conclusion that he'll be gone, but I don't. Marvin Harrison Jr. may still be sitting there.
You don't think he'll go like 4th?
Maybe, but there's a feeding frenzy of teams that want quarterbacks. It's already been reported that the Vikings are on the phone trying to move up into the top 3.
See how much, right? Okay, yeah. See how much we can move around, and
it's just. And then what teams drafting? Do you put the needs of your team at wide receiver over a stud D end, like or an offensive tackle? Or don't get me wrong, Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of the best players in this draft, but that doesn't mean he's going to always fit the need of the people drafting and where there's going to be movement. They literally could end up with the best receiver in football. I'm not saying it'll happen, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, it's just if I was the Cardinals, I'd be looking to trade back as well from that. Yeah, the Chargers are fifth in the draft. So if the Cardinals and Chargers could move back, I would.
Let's say something wild happens and the Vikings trade to 4 because they're in love with somebody or one of the top 3 quarterbacks don't go where you think they're gonna, right? Now all of a sudden at 5, Marvin Harrison Jr. is still sitting there.
Yeah, if for some reason Cliff Kingsbury gets there, realizes that he's in love with Justin Fields over Caleb Williams, which would be ridiculous. That won't happen. But like, yeah, you have somebody sat at 4. But yeah, the Chargers are in a great position in their draft position to move around, really rebuild. So I think it's a high stakes position for Harbaugh to go into. Big media market, soft media though, like the LA media is quite soft. If you're not the Lakers, if you're not the Dodgers, then the media is quite soft, I think. for the NFL, which is quite nice. The fan base is pretty soft as well because, like, when they play the Cowboys or when they play the Eagles or when they play the Steelers, there are more Cowboys, Steelers, and Eagles fans in those stadiums than there are Chargers fans as well, which is actually decent for their money turnover, the Chargers as well. So I think it is quite a high pressure position. He's also going into a division with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid or whoever ends up being the Chiefs coach, Sean Payton, other team in that division, and then the Raiders as well. So if there's a vacuum left by the Chiefs, if the Chiefs completely fumble the head coaching hire, if Andy Reid does go, they still have Patrick Mahomes. So, look, it's an interesting situation for him to put himself into, but realistically, the Chargers could go to the playoffs in their first season under Harbaugh as well. Because if there's one thing he does, he arrives at a place and wins.
I expect him to be competing for a playoff spot at the very minimum with Harbaugh.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, the expectation is now so high because you have Harbaugh in the building, you have Herbert in the building, that it then becomes a more pressure. Like, if he went to the Commanders, for example, and just had all of his time to rebuild with the second overall pick in the draft so he can try and sort out his quarterback situation, that's still not a high pressure job because nobody expects the Commanders to do well. So at least he backs himself there. But, like, hey, man, Jim Harbaugh wins everywhere he goes, so
everywhere
should be backing himself. Yeah, everywhere he's been. The Panthers' decision, I don't really understand. Apart from, it's the Bucs offensive coordinator who's gone there, isn't it? Canales.
Yeah, David Canales. My problem is that you brought in a first-time head coach and a first-time GM to deal with this dysfunctional fucking franchise.
Yeah, it kind of screams to me that nobody wants the job, because what's also actually a guy that's left out in the cold that we haven't mentioned yet is Ben Johnson still doesn't have a coaching job in the NFL. So
that's another thing where I think he could end up with the Commanders if it's not Vrabel, and that the Commanders are slow playing the hiring process because they want him.
Yeah, I don't really understand the whole, like, getting it done so quickly. Like, they're getting these things done, the interviews and everything. I personally think the interviews might have been the reason why Bobby Slowick and the Texans offense looked kind of dead, because he was having to do like 12 hours of interviews in some days. Like,
they changed it where it's only by Zoom and shit until after the divisional round. You can't do it in person until after the divisional round.
But that's still 12 hours sat on a. I don't know how many Zoom meetings you've done, but
let's remember the Rams won it when Kevin O'Connell was at the offensive coordinator in LA, making all of those same interviews.
Yeah, Sean McVay's also on that staff though, which helps. Not to take away from Kevin O'Connell.
No, but I'm just saying, like,
Sean McVay is on that
there's
staff.
a lot of guys who have done those interviews and not shit the bed in the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. I'm surprised that everybody gets it done so early. I know you want to get a head start on your off season.
It's wild that you say
want to
that
get the head start.
This year is the longest it took to get head coach.
Yeah, it still feels so short to me, because the last team to hire their coach for the season last year was the Dolphins, who ended up with Mike McDaniel. So, like, hey guys, like, maybe if you just wait and take your time to pick the right coach, like, yeah, you might lose out, but the three big names in coaching, four if you count Ben Johnson, so Carroll, Vrabel, Belichick, Ben Johnson are all still out there. Like, if you slow play your coaching hires, you might get somebody better. The Panthers, look, I think it might be a case of nobody else wanted to take the job, if I'm being perfectly honest. And Canales has done a great job with Baker Mayfield, rejuvenating Baker Mayfield. He's done a great job rejuvenating Geno Smith. So maybe it's a Bryce Young hire and like quarterback guru style hire, which I don't necessarily hate. I wouldn't make him the head coach of an organization.
My problem is just the head coach and the GM being the first time together, which isn't necessarily usually an issue, except you already have a young quarterback who's had his first year fucked. Who knows where his confidence is? You already have a roster that's in complete disarray, and you're going to bring in two guys that have never built it by themselves before, a culture or a team, and they're in a bad spot. Whereas I'll just go back to the Vikings, hiring Kwesi and Kevin at the same time. They had a lot of veteran leadership. You remember? I mean, if you remember the first year, it was Kendricks, it was Harrison Smith, it was Kirk Cousins, it was CJ Ham. There was all of these veterans to help them through, and right away, the first thing Kevin O'Connell did, he went and hired 3 former head coaches to be on his staff.
Yeah, I also think there's guys out there who have done the job before. The other main issue with what I've got here is the Panthers have fucked themselves in the draft. So your new GM, who's never done it before and hasn't been sat in a position where he's been scouting the lower levels of college talent throughout the year, so they're already starting on the back foot and they don't pick until the 3rd round. With this really awful offense, you don't bring in a guy, you don't bring in a coach with some appeal as a head coach for you to use that free agent money that you've got. Like, he's not even if you had the young talent of Ben Johnson there, like you had like these guys who are being spoken about and all of that, where you can see that, oh yeah, this is dynamic. Like the Bucs offense was never dynamic this year. Like he's fixed Baker Mayfield. That's why he's got the job. But the Bucs offense was never dynamic. They won a game against the Panthers. They only scored 6 points against the same Panthers team that has just hired them. So I'm wondering what's the correlation here? And I can only think of everybody else said no. That's the one thing I can kind of go for here.
All the big names must have, because there's only 32 jobs, right? So there's always going to be somebody who's going. But if you're Belichick, you're not going to go work for Tepper. If you're Vrabel, you're not going to go work for Tepper. Pete Carroll and actually Vrabel and Belichick all don't make sense, because you need somebody to nurture Bryce Young, because you invested so much in him and he's already had a rocky start. I think David Tepper's the problem.
Yeah, Ben Johnson, who's rejuvenated Jared Goff. Like, the rejuvenation of Jared Goff in Detroit is impressive. Ben Johnson
told him to fuck himself last year. That's why they ended up with Frank Reich.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly. So it is just a case of all the best candidates have said no, because your owner's shit, your roster's shit, and you've fucked yourself in the draft position. That's what it is. And look, like, they've brought in a quarterback guru, and I kind of like that for them. So let's see what happens.
All right.
But I'm really not sure.
Wild coaching carousel going on this year. Well, let's talk some games. We got the AFC and NFC championship game, and I'm not going to lie, I really wish these games were reversed. I really wish that the 49ers and the Lions were playing the first game, but they're not. We got the first game is Kansas City traveling to Baltimore Sunday afternoon. Kansas City is 4-point dogs on the road. Patrick Mahomes 9-1 against the spread when he is the dog.
Yeah. Patrick Mahomes is. Look, the Chiefs have realized, like we said they should at the start of the playoffs, and like we started to say midway through the season, their way to win is through running the ball and good defense. How well can they keep up with Lamar Jackson? They've faced Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has an excellent record against NFC teams. Like, it's incredible. Like 19-1. Over his last 20.
It's 20-something and 3 is his overall record. They just said it yesterday.
Against the NFC. Yeah. And I think in his last 20, he's only lost 1 or something like that. Yeah. It's absolutely crazy. Like, his job. But against AFC teams, the record, like, his record is still incredible because he's the quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. They're an excellent team. But when teams get to face them for a couple of times a year, they do learn how to slow them down. So it'll be interesting to watch this game. I think this game has a lot of interesting features. However, the Ravens are such bullies up front, man. And the Chiefs have looked frustrated at times. They haven't got their offense in terms of their aerial offense clicking just as yet. I mean, I think the numbers against the Bills are a bit harsh. I think that game, I'm surprised as to how close everybody thinks that Bills Chiefs game was when they were doing their review analysis. For me, it wasn't even close. Like the fumble out the back of the end zone, if that goes for a touchdown, then that's the end of the game at that point, and we've ended the game as we go into the fourth quarter. So I don't think it was that close. But the Chiefs offense hasn't quite been clicking, and the Ravens are total bullies in their defense. So, and how's Isaiah Pacheco going to do against this linebacker core on the offensive side of the ball? It's going to be an interesting battle.
Yeah, I like the game. It's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. I think, though, well, put it this way. I'll just give you my pick, and that'll tell you what I think. Give me the Chiefs in the money line.
Chiefs in the money line. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm finding this one super difficult. Right. Okay. Just while I'm making my final decision on this one, do you think that this is actually Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes' best accomplishment together to get to the AFC Championship game in a stacked AFC with this team, like with this team being the way that it was in the regular season?
Probably the only thing I would say is maybe Mahomes' first year as a starter, right? Like going to the AFC Championship game in your first year as a starter is pretty impressive. But yeah, I completely understand what you're saying, and I wouldn't argue with anybody who says. And do they not look completely different in the playoffs than they did in the regular season? Like they're the one team that flipped the switch, and it almost seems, and I'm just saying this, not saying this how they felt. It almost seems like they've been to the AFC Championship game 6 years in a row. So the regular season is like kind of boring to them at this point.
Yeah, it's like get to where like we need to get in a position where we need to be. I know they'd ideally like to be the 1 seed, but they weren't playing at that standard. And the problems that have plagued them throughout the regular season are still there in this playoff team. They've just couched Tony, and they've just couched Tony is like what they've done. So they're eliminating that side of mistakes. And Rice has stepped up in the past games. Travis Kelce has stepped up in the past games as well.
Their whole tight end core
I just look at this.
Is good. Gray is good. Like their whole tight end core is good.
Everybody thinks that receivers are just the wide receivers, and it's like, no, actually, like Travis Kelce is having his worst season, but Travis Kelce's worst season is still like best tight end in the NFL still. Like, is Mark Andrews coming back? Are we sure on this? Even
he's probably there's a chance he plays. That's all they kept saying is there's a chance he plays.
Yeah, he'll play in like a mobility issue with a knee strap or something, won't he? But for me, this Ravens team has been so impressive. The control that they had over the entire game.
So, as of 3 hours ago, Mark Andrews activated off of IR, set to return for the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, I think with likely Mark Andrews at tight end, I think with because obviously the wide receiver core of the Ravens has been a much slept on thing this year. Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham's always good for some big catches. The guy out of Washington, Bateman, is always was a guy that I really like coming out of the draft who always makes really good plays. Look, I think the Baltimore Ravens have been really impressive. They have the MVP at quarterback who just seems to get it done when he needs to get it done this year. I'm going to take the Ravens in this one. I'll take the points with the Ravens in this one. I hate betting against the spread with Patrick Mahomes.
What I think the Chiefs cornerbacks might be some of the best in the league, like as a group. And I'm never going to sleep on Snead and Drew and like Williams back there. I think they're going to do a great job of covering. They have great safeties that know where to be. And if you watch those games, they play as a unit. It's no like hero single ball. Like that secondary is for real. That offensive line or that defensive line is for real. I think they will give Lamar problems. And if you look at, like you were bringing up earlier, there's a lot of like the AFC, NFC. The Steelers aren't the greatest, a very good team this year. They weren't. And they played Baltimore tough every time they played them. Andy Reid understands that Baltimore team, how they play. I think that we've said it a million times this year. The Chiefs defense is so underrated. So underrated.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be shocked if Baltimore won. But I have the Chiefs winning this game. So for me, fuck the points because it's 4 points. Give me the money line. That's where I thought about it that way. Like, because I think the Chiefs win this game.
Yeah.
Isaiah Pacheco's questionable. I'll be cheering for Baltimore.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
I think the Chiefs will win, but I'll be cheering for Baltimore.
I like both teams. I like both teams in this one. I'm happy either way. In the same way that I don't like either team in the NFC.
I want Lamar to shut everybody the fuck up.
Yeah, I am. I think that might be. I think seeing how they came out from that second half against the Texans, where they were on a bit of a slippery slope, and it was 10-10 going in. They just conceded that punt return. And everybody, like, the narrative was starting to get, the Ravens are going to choke again. And Lamar just came out and just sealed it up, I think. And also, I think a stadium that is very underrated in terms of noise is that stadium in Baltimore. Like, and the fan base that's underrated is that fan base in Baltimore. Because, like, there's these stadiums that get, like, nobody wants to go to Seattle nobody wants to play Seattle away because, one, weather's probably going to be rank. Two, the noise that's in that stadium is crazy. There's other stadiums like it. The Steelers at Heinz Field as well, like, have the same thing where they're so incredibly loud. Like the Vikings, when they get that skull chant going in that new stadium and everything, like incredibly loud. The New Orleans Saints as well. Obviously, AT&T just has like a feel to it of like a big time game, but that stadium in Baltimore, that was so loud like last week, and it really fucked up the Texans at points as well. I don't think that gets to Mahomes. I'm not saying like it's going to completely mess up Mahomes, but they do have the most penalized left tackle in all of football on their team, especially with false starts, and he usually looks like he's false starting every time. So I feel like that could affect them as well. Also, Isaiah Pacheco is questionable with a turf toe, but obviously he'll play. With turf toe, he'll play.
I watched Dan Orlovsky and a couple of those dudes from NFL Live, Swagoo, break down the false starts, right, by Kansas City.
Yeah.
Only like 20% of, and it's still a lot, and they don't get called, but only like 20% of them are false starts. They literally come off the ball so fucking fast that I actually was like, okay, you guys still false start a fucking ton, but I thought it was more like 80% of the time. So I was just the impressive of them showing in slow motion the snap to the guy moving. Like, it's very impressive how fast those fucking 300-pound dudes can move. It baffles me how a 300-pound dude can move like that.
So Jawan Taylor, who plays left tackle for the Chiefs, right? Like he looks like he false starts every play. Like, I know it's fast, but there's also something in his action where it looks like he's false starting on every single play. And maybe the refs you would hope that the refs sit down and watch the game and say, oh, they're not actually false starting because they're quick off the ball. We don't have any trust in the refs.
I don't think they're going to call it in the AFC Championship game. No, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Like they should be sitting down and ready for, that's another thing that could be done automatically. They call people for false starts in the 100 meters in like by robot now. Smart so like people. You could totally call offensive linemen by false start.
Smart people, smarter people than me, I think will take the points in this game if they take Kansas City, because I do think it'll be a one-score game. I think it'll be a close game. I actually think this is going to be the best game out of the two, and that's why I wish they would have flipped them the way, you know what I mean? I wish they would have flipped them.
Yeah, for me, that's better. For me, the earlier is better. But yes, I do know what you mean.
Yeah, and so plus, I wanted to be able to watch the second game already happy that the Lions were at home crying.
Should we move on to that Lions 49ers game?
Yeah, I wonder who I'm picking in that game.
Happy.
All right.
I'm not happy with the 4.5.
It's the Detroit Lions are traveling to Santa Clara to play the 49ers. 49ers are 7.5-point favorites in that game. Listen, I'm just going to get this out the way. I think the 49ers win this game. I would not bet this game because of the spread, but if you forced me to bet the game, I'm taking the Lions to cover, but the 49ers to win. I think there's a chance the Lions lose by 20 also.
Yeah. So for me, I think the 49ers are going to win. I do think the 49ers
Before you go on, quick question. Do you agree with if the Lions win, it's going to be a close game? If the Lions lose, it could be close or a blowout.
Yeah, I don't think the Lions are going to win by blowout.
Yeah, so if they win, it's going to be close.
Yeah, weirdly, I think the Lions are going to have to get up. This is the way that you beat the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Ravens this year. You get up by 14 or you get up by double-digit scores, and then you try and hang it out at the end of the game. That's how you win this game. So the Lions need.
And you win the coin toss. What do you do as the Lions head coach?
I'm taking.
I get it. I can't argue. I usually would argue, but I'm still kicking because I want that chance to double dip if we're behind, to score at the end of the half and then coming in. But I get it. You get them back. You get them down. I have no problem with that.
Just with those teams that I've just mentioned there, I get it. Yeah. If I'm Kansas City, because the Ravens, it's not as much. If I'm Kansas City, because the Ravens, it's kind of the same thing. If you get up by double digits, that takes away Lamar's legs a little bit. It makes Lamar have to throw, but Lamar can throw absolute dimes as well. If I'm the Ravens, I kick it.
Okay.
If I'm the Ravens, I kick it 100% because the Chiefs can come down from.
So only if you're the Lions, whenever the receive.
I'd be tempted if I was the Chiefs, but if I'm the Lions, I'm receiving.
If I'm the Chiefs, I got Patrick Mahomes. I'm not worried about if they score on me on the first drive.
Yeah, I'm not worried if I'm the Chiefs, I'm not worrying about what they do. Oh, something about the Chiefs that we did mention just quickly before we full on launch into this next game. The one matchup that would really scare me if I'm the Baltimore Ravens is the fact that how often they had linebackers matched up on the running back last year. If they get McKinnon matched up on Queen in the last game, like there was in the last game where it's not Singletary, if you have Pacheco in the open field or you have McKinnon running a wheel route and it ends up with Queen covering him, watch out for that. That would be a real matchup that I would.
And that's the wild thing is the Ravens and San Francisco have the two best linebacking core, inside linebacking cores in the NFL. So just put them in the positions to succeed. Don't put them in bad spots.
Yeah. Yeah, the 49ers have some really good coverage linebackers as well. Do I want any of them covering Jamar Gibbs coming out of the backfield?
No,
no.
I don't want them covering sideline to sideline, not end zone to end zone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, if it's Montgomery, I'm like, okay. But I'd trust my linebackers to cover Montgomery. That's fine. If it's Gibbs, I don't want any piece of that. I'm finding I'm finding a nickel corner. I'm finding a safety to run with Gibbs in that situation. If I'm the Lions, I'm receiving in this game because I do think if you get up by double-digit points against the 49ers, then you try to hang it out. I'm not saying that Brock Purdy can't beat people from behind because he's done it. He's shown that he can. But you take away McCaffrey, you force Brock Purdy to need to beat you, which is weird for the 49ers game flow, really, because McCaffrey is more than capable of breaking off a run for 30 yards anyway, to be honest, which is more than you get off a lot of pass plays in the Kyle Shanahan offense. It's against the Cowboys, I would always receive the ball first and try and go down the field and score. Against the 49ers, I think it's either or, but if I'm Dan Campbell and I'm a gambler and all of that kind of thing, then I'm doing it and taking that into account. I think this is going to be a close game. I think the 49ers are going to win this in a close game. I'm I'm going to take the Lions with the points, but I'm going to take the 49ers to win the game. I think just what I've seen in a lot of chats and a lot of stuff that I've seen recently is the Lions have basically created San Francisco light for the time being. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deebo Samuel. You can argue who's better in that situation. I've been on Amon-Ra this season, but Deebo Samuel has the body of work over quite a few seasons now. Gibbs, McCaffrey.
I think he's a better comparison to Ayuk because they use Deebo as a running back too.
Yeah, maybe.
I still think both. I think both San Francisco top receivers, are better than everybody on Detroit's, but that's not taking anything away from St. Brown because the dude's a fucking monster.
Yeah, and then you have Purdy and Goff. Well, Purdy's probably a little bit better than Goff, but not by a huge amount. Purdy's better than Goff. Don't get me wrong. Purdy is better than Goff. Do you not think Purdy's better?
I don't know, man. I don't know what.
Is it just because of how much you love Goff?
I don't know what to think of Jared Goff anymore. Like Jared Goff completely changed. Makes sense. Like when he got traded out of the Rams, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a shit show for the Lions," right? But he's proved to me that, like, how do you not pay him, right? How do you not keep him? So I don't know who I think is better, to be completely honest. Like Jared Goff has got more live of an arm, but Brock Purdy seems to be like the more. I see it, I read it, I'm out. Like he's. Like I don't want to call Jared Goff stupid because that's not what I'm saying. Purdy's biggest asset is his brain to me. Yeah. Like he processes so fucking fast and he understands that super complex offense, which makes the motions are what makes it complex, right? Like he understands that. And there's no way I can see Brock Purdy sitting there and going, wait, you guys, shift that protection. Or I can't see him letting Aiden Hutchinson come flying towards him where Baker didn't shift the fucking protection the whole game. So you know what I mean? Like, but Jared Goff, Brock Purdy's a little better because he's younger probably. Jared Goff's impressed the shit out of me over the last couple of years.
Yeah, Brock Purdy's probably better from a roster building standpoint, right? Like from who are you building your roster with? You choose Brock Purdy. But yeah, I agree with you. Like if there is a difference, and I think there is, I would say Brock Purdy's a little bit better, but maybe I am looking from that roster standpoint. If there is a difference, it's minimal. Like it's not the difference that
even.
Yeah, it's a minimal difference. The running back room, like obviously the 49ers have Christian McCaffrey, who's the best running back in the league, the best dual threat running back in the league. But then if you look at, like, if you mix David Montgomery and Gibbs together, they have an excellent backfield as well in the Lions. The offensive line, the Lions lineman for lineman, obviously the 49ers have Trent Williams, who's the best left tackle in the league. But the Lions lineman for lineman across that offensive line are probably better. Like
what helps the 49ers make that closer is that, again, this is probably actually goes to your point of why Brock Purdy's better. Brock Purdy's getting the ball out on an average of 2.1 seconds, which is astronomically fast.
Yeah, I think Brock Purdy, I think the other part of that is Kyle Shanahan's offense isn't based on the plays having to have massive amounts of development. So like Mike McDaniel's offense requires like certain levels of development. So Tua has to hold the ball. Well, Tua actually is a weird comparison. Detroit's require. Detroit's require a lot of movement and a lot of development to happen. Tua's not a good example because Tua gets rid of the ball quickly, but that's because he's throwing it to a spot where it's developing. Yeah, but I don't think Brock Purdy gets traded by McVay because McVay thinks Brock Purdy isn't smart enough to run the Rams offense. I don't think McVay is coaching Brock Purdy throughout the play, which is what he was doing with Jared Goff. It doesn't mean that Jared Goff is stupid. It's just a bit more of a simplified play. Like these guys are like the best there is at breaking down those plays. So where the big differences come in is on the defensive side of the ball for Detroit and the 49ers. Detroit are building towards what the 49ers have done. Where they fall flat is on the defensive side of the ball. Look, against the passing game, they've not been great throughout the year. They try and sell out the run. Like, they've got the makings of what could be a good pass rush eventually, but against this scheme, I worry for them. I think it's going to be a close game. We were talking about this before we went on. The fact that the Lions, there were only 10 teams that have been a 7-point dog in an AFC or NFC championship game since 2010. So that's 46 teams have played in those games. Only 10 of them have been 7-point dogs. The fact that the Lions are a dog after the way that the 49ers played against the Packers the week before, I think is crazy. Like, this 7-point spread, I'm going to take the Lions. I'm going to take the 49ers to win, but I think the Lions will be within 7 points.
Who do you think has a better roster, the Lions or the Packers?
The Lions or the Packers? The Lions.
I think the Packers have a way better roster.
Really? Interesting.
They're the youngest team in the NFL, averaging 25 years old. Their receiving core is 3 deep with Watson, Dobbs, and Reed has just come on. I think the Packers have one of the best offensive lines in football. They proved towards the end of the year. And the last 4 or 5 games, the Packers defense looked fucking good. Like, and Aaron Jones.
Joe Burrow still lost his job, though.
And he should. And he absolutely should.
Yeah, they've done the right thing.
There is way too much talent on that team for them not to be a top 10 defense every fucking year. Like, Jair is one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Like, there's so many Preston fucking Smith, all those guys on that defense. Savage was looking great. I think the Packers actually have a better roster. And I wonder if the 49ers if they can stop that run from eating them up like Aaron Jones did, it's a long day for the 49 or for the Lions. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I just think that the Lions defense is nowhere near as good as the Green Bay defense.
Yeah, I think the over-under on this is like 51, right? So they're expecting it to be like pretty high-scoring game because like just the 49ers did get gashed by Aaron Jones, and I would say that a combination of Montgomery and Gibbs is probably better than Aaron Jones singularly, because there were points in that game where there was big plays where Aaron Jones had already been gassed out and was sitting on the sidelines. Whereas if you have that
it fucking killed them.
Yeah, you have that rotation of, and obviously I think Goff is better than Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love plays.
I agree with that. That's why I said roster. I agree with that.
Yeah. So in the most important position, and I think the Lions' offensive line is also one of the best in the league. So I think they're probably a wash there. I also think the point on Green Bay is like a younger team, incredibly valid. I always forget that they're the youngest team in football because like of where they ended up getting to this year. But also, if we're talking about right now for this one game, I think the Lions.
I didn't mean who was the better team. I just asked who you thought had a better roster.
Yeah. So next year, I think the Packers, like with that extra year of development, with that extra year of
they scare me a little.
Yeah, they've like cleared that what is meant to be their rebuilding period. They've cleared it quite quickly as well. And Gutekunst looks like a fucking genius. And I
don't ever say that again.
That doesn't sit comfortably with me. It doesn't sit right with me. The fact that like we've been psyching him off for the past 3 years, and it turns out he's just been redeveloping behind the scenes. What a bastard, you know. Some people just get lucky, I think.
I was just curious because I think the Packers defense is better than the Lions defense too. So I think the 49ers will have a better chance of moving the ball. I was just curious on what you thought.
I think I'm interested by the defensive line of the 49ers because to me, they didn't really show up against the Packers. They did that's unfair. Like in the fourth quarter, they did show up, but like for large amounts of that game, and it's against one of the best offensive lines. But I think this offensive line could be a wash as well. I expect them to do more on the defensive line side of the ball. And I think it shows Chase Young, the Commanders were right to get rid of him for that second round pick. Terrible to get rid of Sweat, it turned out. Like to get rid of Sweat. They could have really done with having one or the other of Sweat and Chase Young, but Chase Young looks washed to me. Like, you know.
I think too, Jordan Love was getting the ball out quick. I don't think it's in Jared Goff's DNA to get the ball out quick.
To get the ball out quick off the back foot and still slinging it. That's Jordan Love's most impressive trait. Pass rushes are going to struggle to get to Jordan Love because the guy can throw the ball off the back foot still like a laser.
There's something about sitting behind Aaron Rodgers for 3 years because that's Aaron Rodgers-esque right there, that getting out quick off the back foot. Yeah.
It's what's going to lead to bad decisions and turnovers if you're trying to fling that down the field on your back foot off like a quick read while you're getting pressed. Like that's going to lead to bad decisions, but it also leads to like, it's what frustrated the Cowboys so much with him, that he was like flinging that ball with pinpoint accuracy every time the Cowboys blitzed off the back foot. So that was impressive. Jared Goff's a bit more statuesque, I would say, like in his field of play. So I think Bosa will probably have a big game. The D tackles, Hargrave is going to have a big game for them if they want to shut off the run like they couldn't do against the Packers. Look, I think they're going to go out and win. I just think 7 points is a crazy spread in an NFC Championship game.
I agree with you. Like I said, that's why I think the 49ers will win. But if I had to bet this game, which I wouldn't, I'm not putting any of my money on this game because of the spread.
Yeah,
I would take the Lions plus the 7.5.
Yeah, weather's a bit funny in Santa Clara as well on Sunday. Like Friday, Saturday, it's looking like it's pretty cloudy, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, it's hammering down with rain. So it says
I thought they said Sunday was
Monday
supposed to be like 68 and no rain for the game or something like that.
Okay, I've got 22 Fahrenheit, so I've obviously got it. I've got 22 Celsius, but it's saying it's not meant to be rain, but there's rain either side of those. Like there's rain either side of the days where the playoff game is. So in a destination like Santa Clara, there's rain either side, so just a little bit.
Do you want to hear the wild stat they're using against the Lions?
Go on.
The Lions cannot win in an open air stadium.
This is the one that they use against the fucking Cowboys all the time as well.
Every one of their wins this year indoors
everyone who plays in a dome. Yeah,
every Lions win this year was indoors. They played 12 indoor games. Every one of their wins was indoors.
Yeah, the NFC is a bit of an indoor division. Like, it's just
a weird stat they're using against them. Like they can't win in an open air stadium.
It's a good stat. Who did they lose to this year? They lost to the Cowboys, who play in a dome. So it'd be quite funny if most of their losses are also to teams in a dome. That would be interesting. Who else did they lose to this year?
I got it up right now. I'm just loading the whole season instead of just this thing. Okay, so preseason. Okay, they
beat the Chiefs first game as well, which is outside.
They lost to the Seahawks, but that was at home.
Okay, so they lost in a dome.
They lost to the Packers outdoors.
That's outdoors.
They lost to the Ravens outdoors. They lost to the Packers again at home.
Okay.
So
that's in a dome.
Yeah. They lost to the Bears outdoors. I forgot that was an ass whooping. I forgot how big of an ass whooping that game was.
Yeah.
And then they lost to the Cowboys,
which is indoors.
Yeah, but they can't. Whatever it was, they can't win an outdoor stadium.
Yeah, well, they also lost 3 games.
They were saying in an outdoor stadium this year.
Was the Chiefs game in Detroit then?
Doesn't matter. They beat the Chiefs. Remember?
Yeah, but if they beat the Chiefs
they did beat the Chiefs outdoors. So that was a wild stat that they put up yesterday because it's not even true.
Right, so it doesn't even include the first game of the year. Like, I hate it when stats do that. It's like they don't win games outdoors, apart from the one game that they did win outdoors against the team that's in the AFC Championship game. Yeah. Yeah. So like, and also like, they also lost 3 games in a dome as well. So what's their record? Like, did they lose 6 games this year?
Oh yeah, what was their record? I think they won 12 games or
5. So they lost 5.
Yeah, they went 12-5. Yep.
Cool. So they lost 5 games. 3 of those losses were indoors. So it's a bit of a weird stat. So actually only 2 of their losses are outdoors. So it's it's just because the NFC is an indoor. They'll find any fucking stat to work in a ridiculous way. That's just stupid.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we were just talking last week how numbers do lie.
Yeah, numbers lie, everyone.
Because it's
numbers
the person who's skewing the numbers that's the liar.
It
you know what I mean?
what you're skewing the numbers for. Exactly.
Like I love those stats where they're like, he's 15-0 in an outdoor stadium when the running back has less than 30 yards in the fourth quarter of a game where the defensive lineman or the defensive lineman wears red shoes. You're like,
yeah,
what the fuck stat did you just come up with?
One of my favorite ones is the Kyle Shanahan one, where it's like Kyle Shanahan is something like 30-0, or well, he's 30-1 now. If his team 5 points behind going into the fourth quarter, which like most other coaches, like the best coaches for that stat, have got 3 wins in that situation. Or like a lot of them are like when he's 8 points behind, he's something and and it's like, yeah, everybody else has only got like 1 or 2 wins though. Like Andy Reid has only got 3 or 4, and that's because of Patrick Mahomes' wild playoff run, when it like that run that they made to the playoffs where they went through was it the Texans where they were downloads and the Titans where they were downloads as well. So like some stats are just absolutely ridiculous, and that's one of them.
Before we get out of here, shout out to Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. The most touchdowns by a single combination of players, passing Brady and Gronk in the playoffs. So congratulations. And shout out to classy ass Tom Brady for tweeting out, when you top Gronk at something, you're one of the best.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking crazy.
Brady made it about Gronk and Kelce, though. I thought that was awesome. Like, that's good for you. Yes.
That's good. And it's also pretty fucking crazy that they've topped that. And Patrick Mahomes is only like 28.
Yeah, 6 years. 6 years.
6 years. 6 years they've done that. That's crazy. That's crazy. Even if they don't get this playoff, this dynasty is one of the best of all time.
Yeah, they keep saying, people are like, it's not a dynasty yet. I'm like, motherfucker, if you go to the AFC Championship game 6 years in a row, the Super Bowl 3 years of those, and win 2 of them, you're a fucking dynasty. What are we even talking about?
Yeah, the only one that they lost was against Tom Brady, where their offensive line got completely decimated in the AFC Championship game as well. Like everybody remembers Tom Brady, and like everybody remembers that game wasn't even close between the Pats and the Chiefs. And it's like, yeah, the Bucs had one of the best defensive lines in all of football that year, and the Chiefs' offensive line were all injured. Like Patrick Mahomes was running for his life the entire time. So that's what they use in the Tom Brady GOAT debate of when he beat. And it's like, yeah, fair use of like he won the Super Bowl with Tampa, like fair to use it in the GOAT debate. But I hope when we get to Patrick Mahomes in the GOAT debate with Tom Brady, I hope when we get to that point, that's not the games that they use against Patrick Mahomes. Also, that game where the Patriots threw for like 45 points and Pat threw for 42. What was it, like 45-42 in an before they changed the overtime rule as well.
Yeah, and they act like Brady's never lost in a Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. Not that. Look,
3.
Tom Brady is the GOAT, right? Tom Brady is the GOAT right now. I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT over Tom Brady.
Know,
that's all I'm saying. But when we get to the debate, I'm interested.
The only way you can beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl is you got to be an NFC East team.
Got to be, clearly. That's
twice to the Giants, once to the Eagles. I'm just saying, like,
got to be playing like a mediocre quarterback at best. No offense, Eli, but you went 500 in your career. So
what about Big Dick Nick?
Mediocre to me. Yeah, Nick Foles is mediocre.
Nick
Apart
Foles
from in that
should have a
playoff run.
fucking statue right now in Philly.
You should do. Yeah, now that Carson, like, I'm pretty sure they didn't build that statue immediately because Carson Wentz was still in the building, right? And now Carson Wentz isn't in the building. Whose
They
feelings
should
are you
have a
hurting?
statue of Nick Foles sitting down with Carson Wentz over his lap being spanked.
I'm so excited for the quarterback. So obviously, we're very excited for the AFC Championship game. We're very excited for the Super Bowl. But when you run a show like this, you also get really excited for the offseason because we get to see all of the quarterback moves that are going to happen. Talking about Carson Wentz, Sam Darnold, what's going to happen with Russell Wilson.
There's
all
a lot
of the
of
quarterbacks
reports
that are in the draft.
Not reports. There's a lot of people that don't think Cousins is going to end up back in Minnesota.
Yeah, what's going to happen with Justin Fields? If Minnesota are making those calls to get up to the top 3, where's Kirk Cousins going to go? Like, there's also, is Dak Prescott going to get paid? Is Jared Goff going to get paid? Like, there is a lot of quarterback drama to go on in the NFL this year, which is
what's
very,
happening with
very
Mac
exciting.
Jones? What's happening with Zach Wilson? And you guys can say,
Yeah, is Mac Jones going to get a team?
Zach Wilson, but I'm interested to see where these guys end up.
Yeah, where is Mac Jones going to go? That's actually incredibly interesting because if Mac Jones, look, Brock Purdy's been hurt like in his career, so Mac Jones goes and backs up Brock Purdy, like while Sam Darnold is playing like fucking somewhere else. I don't know. Like, yeah.
I mean, do you bring him into the Saints in case Derek Carr doesn't play? It plays like he did the last 2 years, and then you replace him with that.
Yeah.
Because after the shit Jameis pulled with that touchdown, he'll never be a Saint again. By to play at the goal line.
Yeah, well, there you go. Jameis Winston as well is always out there. You've also got guys like Taylor Heineke. Is Desmond Ridder going to get another go in the NFL? Like, there are loads of fucking guys out there with potential moves. And like, again, the top echelon of quarterback play is always good in the NFL. This middle echelon may be the best it's ever been, but it may also be the worst it's ever been. And the reason that we have so many quarterbacks moving around is because it could be the worst, but the reason we have so many quarterbacks is because it could be way better and they're just getting pushed by those guys below. Like the overall realm. So like Tom Brady saying like too many people accept mediocrity, and Cam Newton talking about fucking game managers and game changers and all of that bullshit is just a lie, because the reason that we have so many quarterback moves in the NFL and the reason that we think so many quarterbacks are terrible is because there's way more than 32 good quarterbacks in the potentially knocking around.
I'm willing to listen to Tom Brady, but Cam Newton needs to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I don't think his mediocrity was just quarterbacks.
Cam Newton acts like he's a Hall of Famer, and he's not. You're not going to the Hall of Fame, Cam. Not happening. Like, you're not that guy. If they had a hall of really good, that's where Cam Newton goes.
If they had a hall of entertainment, Cam Newton goes. That's where he goes. But Cam Newton's like such an interesting one, because actually, if Cam Newton was more of a game manager, he would probably have more. Like, he probably would have gone to the Super Bowl more than once. He may have won this. He may have a ring. Like, it's just an interesting thing. He probably would have had a longer career because he's not taking those massive hits because he's trying to run over fucking linebackers instead of sliding. Like, which is what made Cam Newton fun and made the Carolina Panthers relevant. And like, the Carolina Panthers probably made more off shirt sales in that period of time where Cam Newton was playing for him than any other time any other time that ever will be in Carolina for some time. Like, the one with that Carolina Panther kit with the Newton on the back is a fantastic kit that you see everywhere. But if he was a game manager, they would have way more wins and he would have had a longer career and might have been a Hall of Famer, because it's like Lamar Jackson game manages and uses his legs to change the game. You don't need to change the game on every play. That's the importance. Tom Brady can say whatever the fuck he wants.
Every great quarterback is a great game manager. They can just do things when the plays break down. You know what I mean? Like that when the offense breaks down, they make shit happen. But we're down to 3 games left, Maddie. 3. That's it.
3 games left. The most interesting news of all, obviously, is where is Louis Rees-Zammit going to end up? as the Welsh rugby player. Obviously, he's training at wide receiver and running back at the moment, which is exciting for any teams out there looking for. Maybe that's where the Chargers look for their wide receiver.
I know the Vikings had that kid from Germany on their practice squad who could run like a 4.140 or whatever, but that never panned out. They had him on their practice squad for like 4 years. It just never panned out.
Yeah, there's a lot of like stuff to do with the NFL and like being integrated in it while you're from a young age and like the feel of what a route should feel like. That I don't think Louis Zammit is ever going to pick up, because you've got to be doing that since the age of like 10.
Well, we'll see. There's a lot of guys who didn't play college ball until like their junior year, and they ended up being great in the NFL. So we'll see what happens. So
let's see. It's an exciting story anyway.
Yeah, and it'll be exciting for Maddie because you can vicariously live through a Welshman.
Yeah, I mean, if he makes it, that might. If he makes it and the Cowboys break my heart in the fucking playoffs again, I might just go and support Louis Zammit forever.
Let's do the wildest shit ever, and when we do our first out of the U.S. team, let's put it in Wales.
Yeah, the fucking Millennium Stadium. That's the shit. I'll send you pictures, man. Best stadium in the world. Wales' rugby stadium.
All right, guys. Well, we made it through another episode. We talked some wild coaching moves, the championship weekend. We'll see how this turns out for the Super Bowl, and we'll be back to review it and to go over what's coming up next for the Super Bowl. And then we're going to get to that off season. I can't wait to start breaking down our quarterbacks and wide receivers and shit like that. That'll be a good time too.
Draft talk. The best time of the year. I've gone in a really weird angle this year where I've taken all the really boring positions first. So I've done my stuff with tight ends and D tackles and linebackers instead of starting with the quarterbacks and wide receivers.
Well, I went to quarterbacks and corners, but that's just because that's what the Vikings need. So I went to more of the Vikings need.
That might have led me to D tackle and middle linebacker. I'm not going to lie. I started evaluating centers the other day.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Go over to Rumble. Hit that follow. Rumble seems to be a fun place right now to be. You got Power Slap, you got Barstool, and most of all, you got Yankee and the Brit. How can you beat that? And
most importantly, always,
if you're an Andrew Tate fan, there you go.
Well, okay. Not that I ever want to endorse Andrew Tate on a show that I'm synonymous with, but okay, if you like
I didn't endorse anything. I just said if you're an Andrew Tate fan, there you go. And Andrew Tate is completely off his rocker sometimes, but once in a great while, he said something, and I go, that ain't the dumbest thing I ever heard.
That's how he judges it. We should break down Andrew Tate one time on the show. We have to do training as teachers in the UK to prepare us for teenagers who are too into Andrew Tate. It's crazy.
It's a wild world we live in.
Absolutely nuts. Like, I've had to do dealing with Andrew Tate training, Jay. What the fuck is that about? What's that about? Anyway.
It's the world of social media taking over, but we digress. So thanks for watching. One world, one love. Deuces.
Cheerio.